I'm Maria Nodoff with the Orangevale History Project, here with our videographer, Ken Benedict. It is Monday, May 23rd, 2022. And we're here to interview the Field family. So if you lovely people would introduce yourselves, please.
Joy Mathers. I'm a granddaughter of Ora and Floyd Field.
Donna Field Matthews, and I had two other husbands that passed me on. So I was born in Idaho.
Joanne Field Allred. And what is it you wanted?
That's great.
Larry Field. I'm the youngest.
I'm Lemoyne Field, the oldest son.
Thank you. And Joy, you mentioned Ora and Floyd. Who are Ora and Floyd?
My grandparents and their parents.
Okay, and how did they came to Orangevale, I'm assuming?
Yes.
And how did they come to where did they come from, first of all?
Idaho.
Oxford, Idaho.
Oxford, okay.
They moved here in May of 1940. The second time. They came one other time and stayed a brief, like one summer, and then went back to try to save the dry farm
And
during
then,
the Depression.
yes. So, let me see. So, which one of you is the oldest?
Norma is the oldest, but she's not here today, so Donna would be the second oldest.
All right, so one of you said you were a native. That was you, Larry?
That was me. I
Okay,
was the
so-
only one born in Sacramento.
Okay, the rest of you came then with your parents
Yes.
from Oxford?
I was born in Oxford, Idaho.
Okay, and do you remember moving here?
I do not.
I don't.
I can remember very long.
The only one that would probably remember, and I'm going by my mom's journal, was our oldest, Norma. And she cried all the way to California because she left all of her friends back in Idaho.
So, when your parents arrived, did they settle in Orangevale originally, or did they settle somewhere else first?
My first recollection of staying with an aunt and uncle on Kenneth Avenue,
Right here?
right? And then we eventually rented a house on Illinois Avenue, right directly across from where the Roberts Elementary School is now.
It's called Orangevale Open School, I think, now.
Right.
Yes, they moved there. So, how long did you live in the rental?
Until my father started building the house on Hazel. And I'm not really sure that when that was, but it was in the early 40s or 41, 42 when he actually started building the house. And his mother and father, my grandparents, had a house directly on Hazel. And they gave my father and mother an acre of land for my dad's labor of building them a house that was on Hazel Avenue and was still there somewhere, but it's down toward Capri Market on the opposite side of the street. But it's still intact as far as I know.
The house is still there?
I believe it is. And the house that we lived in was in back of my grandparents' house. My grandparents had 5 acres that actually was on Hazel Avenue.
Okay, so that was on the Capri side or on the south side?
On the other side.
On the south side?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's interesting. We'll have to find that house.
The house is
As far as I
in
know,
that
it's
little
still there.
housing project, just outside that little housing project right behind the Orangevale post office.
Okay. Okay, we'll have to go find it. Do you have an address for it?
6401
That was where we lived, was 6401.
Naranja Avenue
Oh,
was
okay.
their address.
And the house that you have is still standing, the Naranja house.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you lived in back of them? No, they lived in back of, no.
My grandparents lived directly on Hazel Avenue, and my grandparents deeded to my mother and father an acre in back of where they were.
What did your parents do for a living?
My father was a dry farmer in Idaho, but they lost the dry farm in the Depression, And when he came to California, his first jobs was, that I can recall, was in truck driving commodities in and out of Folsom Prison. But then he also worked as a mechanic in his garage for himself. He worked for the Stockton shipyards during the war. He eventually got on at McClellan Field, and that's where he retired, was from McClellan Field, California.
And your mother, did she work outside the home?
During the war, she worked at Mather Air Force Base in the cafeteria there, and her favorite person was Jim Cagney. Or no, Jimmy Stewart, I'm sorry.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And she always said that he was a loner, he didn't want to meet anybody, because he didn't want to know anybody that might be killed in the war.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And the only other job that I know my mother had was for a while was in Capri Market. She worked in there, what they call the soda fountain. But she didn't work there, but I don't think more than 2 or 3 years at the most.
Okay, so she worked there for the Woos.
Yes.
Yes, okay. And was that while it was the Capri, not the public market, the Capri
That
market?
was
Capri
Capri
Market,
Market,
yes.
All right. So tell us about your childhood memories, about before going to school, if you have any of those, or being in school. Which schools did you attend, and who were your teachers?
We all attended Roberts when it was still on, except Larry. We all four attended Roberts on Greenback Lane before it was burnt down.
It was the Orangevale School.
And it was
No,
called,
that was Roberts School that we
They
went
called
to.
that one Roberts?
Yes.
okay, that was on Greenback?
On Greenback,
Greenback and
and
Kenneth.
it was right where Kenneth used to dead end. It didn't go through. It dead ended right into the schoolhouse on Kenneth.
Oh, okay, and it burned.
It burned, was put on fire by one of our young
Volunteer
classmates,
fireman that was volunteering for the Orangevale Fire Department.
Dickie Barnes.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how often his name has come up.
Really?
Oh, yes.
He got the clubhouse as well as that, plus some other houses around it.
That's what we heard, yes. Yeah, there's an, let me see, was the interview where he was at Folsom Prison, remember? One of our interviewees, his son went out, played baseball for San Juan, and they went out to play the prisoners, and
There he was.
out he strolled, said, "Hi, remember me?" Oh dear.
They all went to San Juan High School, though, except my Uncle Larry
Okay,
to
so,
Bella Vista.
and Larry, you did not go to Roberts?
I didn't go to the original Roberts, no. I was in kindergarten at the Orangevale School right over here on
Central and Filbert.
Central and what?
Filbert?
Yeah, Central and Filbert. And then after kindergarten, they built the Roberts School, which is now Roberts, or Orangevale Open, I guess it is. And then I went there. And then from there, they built the Central Avenue School, which is now Coleman or something like that
Yes,
now.
Thomas Coleman School.
And then from there, I went to Bella Vista. I was the second graduating class at Bella Vista. I missed San Juan by 1 year.
So you were 65?
I graduated in 64.
64.
The first graduating class was 63. And when Bella Vista started, there was only 2 classes, freshman and sophomore. So 63 would have been the sophomores, and I was a freshman, so I graduated in 64. I was the first 4-year person at Bella Vista.
Wow, and all of you, though, you went to the Roberts School, the old Roberts School, and then did you go K through 8?
I went to Roberts School till I was through the 7th grade, and at that time they consolidated Orangevale and Roberts, and so the upper grades went to Orangevale. So I actually graduated from the Orangevale School on Central and Filbert. Yeah.
Right.
And do you remember what year that was?
I graduated from high school in 54, so it would have been 4 years before then that I graduated from Orangevale also,
Okay.
but I moved because the school burnt down.
Right. So you ended up at...
I ended up at Orangevale Grammar School.
Okay,
Yes,
all right. And then from there you went to San Juan,
San Juan.
all right? And The same with you?
I graduated from San Juan.
No.
No? So I did. I'll be 90 pretty soon. My mind doesn't work just right. So they'll correct me if I'm wrong.
That's all right. That's all right. So, what are your memories of your school years living in Orangevale? Do you have any memories of particular teachers or friends, families that you were friends with, or activities you did?
Well, I can speak for myself. Friends at that time weren't next door. They were within the confines of what we call Orangevale right now, and so they could be on Main Avenue. Matter of fact, one of my best friends was on, so if I wanted to go visit him, I had to leave Hazel and bicycle all the way to Main, but I'd do that almost regularly.
And you ladies?
Oh, I remember the playground because the school was on a hill. So the playground was on the hill. And it was interesting how we could still play baseball and everything on the hill.
There was 1 to 4 in one classroom,
Yeah, there were just two rooms.
4 through 8, and
Oh,
the
it's
next
a two-room schoolhouse.
Well,
Yeah.
that's not quite true. There was 2 rooms in the schoolhouse, and then they had what they called the annex, which I normally was in the annex. So it was another building just off to the side, but they were all still fire built or coal heating. There was no, or wood heating. I don't know what they used the most of.
And I always understood that building you're speaking of was the original one before
That I don't know.
and I might be wrong, but that's what I understood.
I should
So
have brought
did
my
you-
photos.
Did you have any special toys that you recall?
Like
No,
King for
we
Camelot.
do with what we had.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what a lot of people say. They played outdoors and they and made
Annie over.
and they made their toys or used whatever was around.
And in the summer, before my mother went to work, for the summer at Matherfield, my mind wanders. What did you ask just before then? It'll come back to me, hopefully.
About your toys and friends.
Oh, in the summer, because we didn't have air conditioning until Mother went to work, we played out in the water, either the sprinklers or we didn't have little pools or anything. We just played in the water to keep it cool. I can remember that.
Just sprinklers and hoses and ran around. I remember that.
My parents didn't have a lot of money, and so my mother would encourage us to use our imagination, and we played a lot outside. And I can remember my very first bike. I can remember that. I can remember begging for a BB gun, and my mother wouldn't let me have one because my brother had found one in a field somewhere and had gotten some BBs and shot himself in the eye. And so
That was him.
my mom wouldn't let me have a gun. And I couldn't go swimming because one of my sisters had almost drowned.
That was Norma.
That was Norma. So I was, being the baby, I was kind of picked on.
Yes.
I shouldn't say that. I was very well loved.
Was this drowning? This happened in the American River, or was it? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we used to swim a lot in the American River. Matter of fact, I would, in high school and late grammar school, I would always be either at Folsom underneath the bridge or at Fair Oaks underneath the bridge, swimming.
And
my
he
uncle
hasn't
taught
set
me.
a toe in that pool, ever.
Just not a pool swimmer. You got to be out in the.
My wife bought this house.
I haven't been in our pool either.
Ever?
And I don't
my.
like water, so even if I had one, I wouldn't get in.
Oh my.
That's
I
one
did
thing
learn
I
to
can
swim.
tell you my mother made me do. She said if I was going to go swimming, I had to take swimming lessons, and they drove me weekly over to Roosevelt. It was the only public pool in this whole entire area. And I ended up graduating as a lifeguard.
And worked at that pool?
No, I never did practice being a lifeguard, but I've got the certificate that says I was a lifeguard.
So most of your time was spent in and around your neighborhoods, at school. Do you remember powwow days?
No, they didn't have
No,
powwow days.
they
It was
didn't
called
really.
the Orangevale. Oh, what was it called? It was over at the old community center on Hazel Avenue, which was across from the new one. And I can't remember what it was called. It was just called Orangevale Community Days or something like that. It didn't become powwow days till years later.
The Orangevale Fire Department sponsored me as queen
Oh,
for when we had the Folsom Festival. And I came in third, I think. The one that came in first, her dad owned a bar. And they chose us by how many tickets we sold. Well, that family had a bar and got all the bar people there. And I think I came in second or third.
And I just read that in Mom's journal.
Oh, did
And you
you?
won $50 and you gave Mom and Dad the money so that they could buy a sink for the kitchen
That's right.
and cabinets for the bathroom.
Yeah.
all of that for $50. Well, that was lovely of you.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Do you have photographs?
I
You should.
might have. I brought my little Orangeville book, but I didn't think about bringing.
She has all of my grandma's genealogy records in somewhere, and maybe there's something within that that has photographs.
Yeah,
That would be lovely. That would be lovely. Sounds like you had a pretty carefree childhood, would you say? You felt secure and you weren't?
Very loved.
Yes, that's.
Very, very loved.
Not like today. I can remember my folks going back to Utah on vacation because all my mom's side still lived back in Utah. So every summer that was our vacation. It's going back to Utah for family reunions. And I can remember leaving the house in Orangevale and they just hooked the screen door. We'd leave the doors wide open. There was no locks. The door was always open. They never, even on vacation, they never locked the doors.
Well, this rental that my grandmother owned and we rented from her. I'm sorry, my head just doesn't, I get started and I can't
My
remember.
grandma bought a house on Illinois
Yeah.
that my folks rented, and I believe they were there 4 years.
Oh, we were there more than 4 years.
Yeah. You sure? According to
Yeah.
the journal, I think it said 4 years.
So they're
And then
only
that's when-
referring to a journal that my grandmother wrote about her life from, I don't know if it's from her birth
Yeah.
to what year, but we
I
all
would keep
got
it to
a
the
copy
Orangevale
for
stuff.
Christmas.
I would keep it to the Orangevale stuff.
Hand
Oh,
wrote,
okay.
longhand. I couldn't find my copy to refresh my recollections.
And her handwriting is so,
You're doing pretty good.
I can't even read my own handwriting.
Yeah, for entertainment, it sounds like you took family vacations and you played with friends and out in the yard. Was there anything else? Did you ever go to the movies or?
The only movie theater anywhere around here was in Roseville. It was the Tower Theater in Roseville. So we went there, or at least I did. That was about the only entertainment. For school, we used to go over to Roseville to J.C. Penney's to buy clothes for school.
Well, in my era, we played a lot of makeup basketball or baseball. With the team was really out of Fair Oaks, but because we had so few people that we associated with that were ball players, we would draft people all the way from Carmichael just to get enough people to make a team. And then Ralph Hinsey from Fair Oaks, who used to own most of Fair Oaks, would find us game or competitors either all over in Sacramento, Roseville, and so it was a pickup type of a game, but at the last minute as far as getting to actual diamond privileges.
So did you have uniforms, or was
No,
it, no,
no.
just whatever?
Bring your own mitt, you had to bring your own ball, I mean, your own bat.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a waste, and that was the only thing that we did,
Mm-hmm.
other than high school sports.
And did you play sports in high school?
Yes, but I wasn't very good, but I was always made the first team because there weren't enough people to go around to fill out a team. So
So was it baseball you played, or?
I played baseball, basketball, and ran cross country.
Aha. And what about you ladies? What did you do in high school?
I played a lot of sports.
Yes.
I was in Girls Athletic Association and Girls Block. I even got a block. It's just a little one compared to the boys. But yeah, I played all kind of sports and enjoyed it. Now, I couldn't play anything.
We were encouraged during the summers to find work. And so the four of us that were the older four, we always had work in the summers. We worked at the dry shed on Pecan that was owned by the Greenhalghs and Neely's. We went all the way to Loomis, Penryn, and worked dry sheds up there. The four of us also worked for the auction yard, the cattle auction in Roseville. There was a what do you call it, a soda fountain type where people would have meals and so forth, and all four of us every Saturday would work at that place
You worked in the soda fountain?
in the soda fountain.
Ah. All right, and you worked for the Greenhalghs also in their shed.
Yes.
And how did you get to Roseville to work?
My oldest sister was able to drive. She
I
had a
see.
driver's license.
I see. So you worked in the sheds in the summer and
Right,
managed to still play baseball and
right.
have fun?
I started babysitting when I was in the 4th or 5th grade. And I babysat twins and 2 little boys. My mother worried to death. There was no telephones. She kept saying, Eileen, she's too young to do this. Eileen would say, I trust her as much as I trust myself. And, but there were twins and then 2 little boys. And she had us over at the auction yard. You wouldn't call it a restaurant, just a little snack bar. And so I took care of the kids while she worked at the snack bar.
Are there any other families that you remember from the neighborhood or from the community?
One of my best friends, Thoriana, she goes by Thora now, she moved here when she was when we were both in the 2nd grade, and we still keep in contact
And where does she live now?
in Southern California.
Okay.
Yeah, and her health isn't good, but we still keep in contact.
And any teachers that you remember in particular?
The teachers that I had the most respect for and that really gave me the want, I might say, is to go on to college and extend my education was Mrs. Perry, who was also she worked for Sadie Cable, but Mrs. Perry was really the one that stayed with me all the way through. And even though she was grammar school teacher, she stayed with me all the way and made sure I did everything right in high school.
Wow.
Yes, she was my teacher.
Did you
too.
go see her, or did she come see you, or?
She was just, Sadie Cable had a pool, and she lived very close to her, and she had a son, his name was Renard Perry, that I ran around with some, and so she just made sure that from the education standpoint that she helped me out as much as she could.
So after high school, what happened to you all?
Well,
Lemoyne, you want to start with you?
I got classified as 1A, and so I had a choice of being drafted or go into either the Navy or Air Force, and I joined the Air Force and spent 4.5 years in the Air Force. Originally boot camp here in California, 13 months in Biloxi, Mississippi, in electronics school, and then I got stationed right back at McClellan Field, which I did not want, but the rest of my career there. And then from there, I got my college education through the GI Bill, and I worked for Aerojet as well as, that's the only job I've ever really had other than my business. But
Where did you go to college?
Sac State, I have a degree in psychology, and then I went on to USF for my master's in business, and then I went back to Sac State later on and got a degree in human engineering and human resource engineering.
Joanne, what did you do after high school?
Got married.
Well, I got married after I came back from the service, but yeah.
Yeah, I graduated in June, got married in August, and I married a Marine. He just came home from Korea, and he had another year to go, and I will tell a little story that everybody knows anyway. They think I'm... He came home, after he came home, he had 30 days off, leave. So he came home, and his mother said, I know a little girl over in Orangevale, why don't you call her? And so he would hitchhike home from Camp Pendleton, Southern California, quite often, just to date me. And he came home in 1st of August, and he said he was on leave. We got married. He said, I can't take you back with me right now because I'm going to be out on maneuvers, he called it. And so he said, it'll be about 3 months. So I didn't find out that he wasn't home on leave for maneuver. He actually was in the brig because he had come home.
AWOL.
Yeah. He said, well, how I found out after he was retired and he came home, and I was going through some boxes and I saw this and I thought, what? He said, well, I had leave on the books and they wouldn't give it to me, so I just came home.
He came home to see you.
He came home to get married.
And ended up spending 3 months in the brig?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's romantic.
I guess you could look at it that way.
We were young and foolish.
And did you settle in Orangevale?
Well, for a year after we got married, after he got out of the brig, we went, let's see.
You lived in San Clemente, I know.
Yeah, we lived in San Clemente, 2 or 3 different places. And then when we came home, after he retired, we came to Orangevale, but our first home was in Fair Oaks So we didn't move back to Orangevale. I mean, we built a home in Roseville. We lived there for 3 years, I think it was. And then he had an Aerojet was laying off like crazy, and he took a layoff in lieu of downgrade, they called it. And he went back to civil service, but he says, I'll take the first opening that's permanent, which was Hillfield, Utah. So we packed everything up and all 4 kids and went to Hillfield. And right after we got there, a friend of his had been trying to reach us. He didn't know we had actually moved. He went out to our house and we weren't there, and it took him a while to find out where we were. Contacted my husband, and he said, you've just got to come and interview for this job. It's a really good job. So we loaded all 4 kids in a Mustang, which isn't much room. Came back, he gave his notice, and then we came back, and we've been in the same house now for, well, let's see, our youngest one is 57 and he was 2, so 55 years we've been in Orangevale. Yeah.
Well, before that, too, you lived in Orangevale on Fortuna.
Fortuna Way for 8 years, yeah, forgot about that. Yeah.
My memory was better a few years back. I too, after high school, I was dating a young man, and he was in the Second World War. Anyway, he had been gone a year. He was stationed in Hawaii. He'd been gone a year, and we wanted to get married right out of high school. So right out of high school, they extended his year. I mean, because of the Korean War, they extended his time another. So he didn't get home before we could get married. And let me think here a minute. He had been in the Korean War for a year, and his chief's wife wrote my parents. They extended his time. He was in World War II when the Korean War broke out, and they extended his time another year. And his chief's wife wrote my parents and said, these kids have been waiting and dating through the mail for the last year and a half. Can Donna come over here and they can get married here because they extended my husband's time because of the Korean War. My parents and his parents drove me to the airport in San Francisco, put me on an airplane, which is a DC-6, which was, I was all excited. I wasn't scared at all. My parents were the ones. And I thank them even today for letting me go. I don't know if I could have done that with one of my kids or not.
And where did you go?
Oahu.
Oh.
And he was in the Navy. And we lived in Waikiki. And we were there a year. Then he got discharged, I guess, or sent back home. I can't remember which. Anyway, I think, I'm 90 years old, guys.
You're doing fine.
You're doing great.
My memory isn't what it used to be. But anyway, his time was extended, and so I flew over there on the DC-6. And he met me at the airport with his chief and his wives. Beautiful, beautiful people. They told my parents, if you'll let Donna come over, we will properly chaperone them until they get married. So I spent the night with them. They had the wedding all planned. I was married in a borrowed, the friends we stayed with, Marie and Ray White. I was married in a formal that she had bought for some dance. And we had our, what do you call it?
Reception?
After you're married, you have,
Reception.
the reception at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, which was nice. And we lived in Waikiki, which is beautiful. It's right on the ocean, pretty much. We were there for a year, and then we were sent home.
Did you come home to Orangevale?
We came home to Orangevale. Well, the president of the LDS church over there married us. Mm-hmm. And we came home on a ship, and I was just starting pregnancy for our first child. And I had morning sickness, plus
Seasickness, maybe?
seasickness. Thank you. It was like this. So I didn't enjoy the ride home on the boat. It was, I was in bed the whole 5 days it took us to get home. And it was a wonderful experience. And I thank my parents every day, almost, for letting me go that many miles.
So when you came back to Orangevale, what did you and your husband do?
He was still in the military for part of the time. We bought a home down in Violet Street. What?
Was it called Arden then?
Yeah, by the shopping center down there.
Down Country
Yeah.
Club, Arden Arcade area.
Yeah, that's where it was. And our first child, I was 3 months pregnant when we came home on the ship. And between the seasickness and just sickness from being pregnant, I spent 5 days. I couldn't get out of bed, really. I spent 5 days, wasted days, I call them. But it was a wonderful experience, and Waikiki is beautiful. I met lots of nice people over there. I worked part-time. It was a wonderful experience.
When you came back to Orangevale then, were you home with the children or did you have a job outside the house?
No, I was, like I said, I was 3 months pregnant on the ship coming home. And I didn't go to work. My husband went back to, well, he did butchering for a while. And then he went back to McClellan Field. He was in the Navy. And I babysat a lot of kids because I couldn't actually go to work. So for extra income, I babysat. It was a wonderful experience. And I think of my children and I think, could I have done what my parents did, sending me so far away?
Yes.
But they knew what was important, I guess. And when my husband's chief and his wife agreed, wanted me to come over, said they would properly chaperone me.
That was lovely of them. So Larry, what about you? You went to Bella Vista then, graduated from Bella Vista.
To go to Bella Vista because San Juan, all my friends went to San Juan and I missed it by 1 year. And I was a little upset, but you know what? It turned out okay because all my kids graduated from Bella Vista also. And so it turned out kind of nice that they went to the same school I did. But my early years, like Lemoyne said, our parents really encouraged us to work. If we couldn't go to our parents and say, hey, Mom, I need 50 cents to go to the movie. They'd say, get a job and go to, our first cars. I'm not going to pay for your car. You want a car? Get a job. So we were encouraged to work. And I can remember my first job was with the Wu Brothers. I was probably, I want to say 12 or 13 years old. And because I was too young, because of the California work laws, after school, he would put me in the back room sorting Coke bottles. And that was my first job. And then at 11 years old, I got a job carrying the Sacramento Bee. And I think the age limit at that time was 12. And the district manager for the Sacramento Bee wanted to give me the job, but my mother would not lie for me. She says, if you want him to have the job, that's fine, but I'm not going to lie about his age. So he ended up giving me the job at 11 years old. And so I had a job carrying the Sacramento Bee actually all the way up till I almost graduated from high school.
Was that locally here in Orangevale?
Yep. My route was Greenback to
Greenback to Oak
Avenue.
And on the other side
Hazel
was
to Almond.
Hazel to Almond. And I had the same B route, except I had it in the 6th and 7th grade for 18 months for the B. And the most papers I ever delivered was 85, 86 papers, where he had the same thing.
And I was up to 150 papers.
Yeah, so that...
And at that time, pretty well everybody took the newspaper, so that tells you how big Orangevale was. Going from Greenback to Oak Avenue, Hazel to Almond, 150.
And that was all the streets in between.
All the streets in between. So there wasn't a lot of people in Orangevale at that time. And I remember I also worked for Vernon Cable, where Cable Shopping Center is now. That was just a field, and he used to plant hay there in the summer. And so me and another kid would help him bale hay and deliver it to different people that had horses and cows in Orangevale.
A lot of people did then.
Yeah. And then I got a job Also, so I was working 3 jobs, a newspaper boy, box boy at Capri Market, and then I also got a job at the Sunrise Drive-In Theater in the snack bar. So I was working 3 jobs at one time and still going to school. And probably my earliest memory of Orangevale was the old public market, and then they built the Capri Market, and I remember a Vans Market, and I want to say that was,
Was also the Jet Market also at one time.
yeah.
And wasn't there a greenback?
I want to say Vans was over where the 99-cent store is, where Ashley's,
Right.
and then the, what one was the one you said?
Well, the Jet Market and Vans were the same market.
Okay,
so
but there was
different.
also a market where Wild Sports used to be.
Was that
That
called?
was Vans and Pep.
Oh,
That was
it?
Vans.
Okay.
That was Vans, okay. What was the market over there where by Ashley's? That was a market.
I can't remember that.
Anyway, that was a supermarket too, so there was actually 3 markets. And then also across from Capri Market was a Safeway. That Capri Market put them out of business. So,
Wasn't there a day-old bakery also?
a what?
A day-old Rainbow Bakery?
There was in there, yeah, but that was later. That was after Safeway went out, I think. There was, they'd converted Safeway to a,
Is that when Walmart went in there? Not Walmart.
yeah, it was a drugstore.
Walgreens.
And then the bakery was right next to that. But I also remember Lehman's gas station, Spudnut Donut Shop.
Wasn't there a Rexall in where Capri was too?
There was a
A
Rexall
little
Drill.
coffee shop where Grandpa
Well, the
used to
Rexall
walk
was
to.
owned by a person who married one of my cousins, Dale
Dale Schrader.
Schrader.
Yes.
And he had that for a number of years until the big drugstores ran the small drugstores out of
Right.
business.
Probably tell them.
But he started out at the Orangevale drugstore, which is where
But
the old Orangevale post office used to be. There was a post office, a drugstore, and then Vernon Cable's office.
But even playing sports, we always had jobs. I worked for the Golden Eagle Service Station all through high school on after school.
Where was that?
That was right across the street from Plumber's Feed Store. Now, I've read all the others, and they talk about Chiquitas or whatever it is, Feed Store,
Sicardi's.
Sicardi's Feed Store. Well, there was a Plumber's, but it was right where the Orangevale liquor store is now, was the Golden Eagle Service Station. It was owned by Harry LeMasters. And Harry LeMaster's wife also opened up a little store right next to it, which was a fountain store in the back and a beer store in the back, or in the rear is a beer, in the front was a shop. And I think both of you worked there.
Was it down Main and Greenback?
No, it was right where the Golden Eagle is now, or where it used to be, where the Orangevale liquor is
Is
now.
that where Lee Masters?
And then right next to that was the fire station.
Then there was a
Orangevale
little
Fire
fountain
Station, volunteer fire
that I worked
station.
at.
That was the one that was owned by Harry LeMaster's wife, Lillian.
Yeah. That was fun.
And you worked there? So you worked for the Woos, but nobody else did.
I worked for I didn't really call it work. He paid me for certain jobs, and one of them was sorting Coke and bottles, separating them to put it back in their cartons, which were all wooden cartons at that time. And he would say, well, we're going to put it on the books, which meant that if he wanted me to sort, I'd go sort, but he didn't give me any money. He put it on the books, so if I wanted to Coke myself or a candy bar or something, then it got deducted at that time from the books.
Tasty.
Right. And yet another place that I like to give a lot of, for the kids growing up at that time, was the Campfire Cafe. Mr. Trainer, who owned it, always made sure that if I didn't have money, he had some kind of an odd job that I could do to get enough money to buy whatever that was going around at that time, Coke or a milkshake or something. But Mr. Trader was very, very good to kids.
Do you remember the P&D Market
Yes.
on Main Avenue?
Yeah, it's right up here. That, I think, was owned by the Wyatts. And I don't know if it was which of the Wyatts, but my wife graduated with one of the Wyatts, and I graduated with one of the Wyatts.
Yeah, that was just right here on Main Avenue.
Yeah. But this part of Orangevale didn't really start growing until the dam started, and then we have with Aerojet starting then, because I know that what is called Bloomingdale's right now, or Bloomingdale's, that used to be when it opened up, that was a furniture store. Because of all the new people moving in, that was the first store locally, other than going to Folsom, you could buy furniture.
So right there on Main.
It's called Bloomingdale's now, but
But wasn't that the P&D Market before it became the furniture store?
no, it was, P&D Market was back by where the motorcycle shop in that area. I'm not sure
Okay.
which building
Okay,
it was.
next to
but
it, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What was the clubhouse called?
the clubhouse,
The Orangevale Clubhouse?
One that,
the burnt down.
that's where my high school, or my 8th grade graduation was in that clubhouse.
There was a lot of activity.
That was right on the corner of Greenback and
It's where the Shell station was.
Hazel Avenue.
And I also worked for the Shell station where it was on Greenback and Hazel. With Reggie Pittman was the person who owned it.
And
That was after the clubhouse burnt down.
Right.
Did you work there when Lee Masters had that little fountain that I worked at?
His wife had the fountain and he ran Bear Joint as well as the service station.
Right.
so what did you do at the service station?
Pump gas. And that back in those days, it was insisted that you always washed the windshield and you checked the pressure in the tires. And I was a young kid and I followed orders. But I did that during the summers and after school, all through high school.
Do any of you remember the Asian restaurant at Greenback? I mean, at Orangevale Avenue and Main Avenue? Real small,
An Asian restaurant? A Greenback?
Chinese?
Greenback and what?
No, Main and Orangevale Avenue?
That's right
Orangevale
here.
Avenue is right out here. And that's one of the things I want to talk about later on.
No, I don't
Orangevale
remember
Avenue.
that.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember either.
It was there,
But
to go only.
to what?
Most of the time when we were growing up, Greenback Lane stopped at Main and you made it left at Stain and came up to Orangevale Avenue and then you went across it to get to Folsom. They didn't add that section from where Main is to tie into Greenback and Madison for some time after we were out of high school.
So
At one time, Orangevale Avenue used to come all the way through.
Right, and that's why I want to talk about that
Has some
later on.
maps.
Or whenever you want to get to it.
well, let's get to it. This
Yeah.
sounds interesting.
Well, okay, one of the things that I keyed in on after I started reading all the people talking, they kept talking about Greenback Lane, and this is where all the businesses were. And yet I go back to the original maps of Orangevale, and they keep talking about Orangevale Avenue. So I kept thinking, well, what happened to Orangevale Avenue? Well, it was there, but it was always a dirt road, just as Greenback Lane was always a dirt road. And after there were two brothers. They were called, we referred to them as the Hindu boys, which would be illegal right now, but that's what they were called back then. But their parents got killed in an automobile, and they owned the cherry orchard in back of the Orangevale post office, and in that area, what is now that subdivision, and back then it was called or Cherry Manor.
Do you remember the names of the boys?
We just referred to them as, and I'd prefer not even say that I
Okay.
called the Hebrew boys because, but they had to sell it because their parents got killed in an automobile accident, and so they eventually sold that acreage. Well, my father wanted me to buy the acreage, and I was in high school, but I'd been saving to buy a car ever since I was able to drive. And the acreage was put up, the 10 acres of that cherry orchard was put up for sale at $80 an acre, $800. And my dad begged me to buy it, and I bought me a 46 Ford convertible. But anyway, the Greenhalghs then got involved, and they decided they wanted to buy that land, and which they did. And they came up with a plan which was called Cherry Manor, which some people have told me it's probably the first subdivision, planned subdivision in Orangevale. I do not know that to be a fact, but thinking back, I cannot think of any other place that was a subdivision other than that. But anyway, Cherry Manor bordered, my parents bordered Orangevale Avenue. My grandparents were, well, maybe it's best if I could find the map here to. Are you under a time limit here? Because if you need to speed it up, speed it up.
Are you? No, we'll stay. We can get Carrie out if we need to.
Okay. This is Hazel Avenue here right now. Mm-hmm. And well, here's Hazel Avenue. Mm-hmm. So this would have been my grandparents' land right here. Mm-hmm. And this was where Orangevale Avenue was at that time, but it was a dirt road. Well, the Greenhalghs wanted to have this subdivision called Cherry Manor, and actually have it. This is broken up into small lots just strictly for housing. Well, what they proposed was they wanted to take all this, what was Orangevale Avenue, and they wanted to move their subdivision right up to the point where it above, well, this wouldn't have been a road anymore. They took all the roadway away. So they came to my father and wanted to know what they could do. My father didn't have any money to hire a lawyer, so he got a hold of Ansel Hoffman, who was at that time the County Board of Supervisors, and he told him to go work with Judge Diestel. Judge Diestel lived on the corner of Central and Main.
No, Central and
Central
Hazel.
And Hazel, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And they kind of got into a negotiating and what Ansel Hoffman wanted him to do was come out to us so everybody wins. Well, like I said, my father didn't have the money to buy her attorney, so they worked through an arbitration. And so they agreed that the Greenhalghs could take their subdivision and completely move to the center of what we called Orangevale Avenue. And so it would have left my grandparents and eventually us, because we had no way to get to this land that my grandparents had given us, or given to my parents. Mm-hmm. And so they finally came to an agreement if they could find a way to give my parents in access to this property, my dad would go along with it. Well, that's when they came up and changed the map to give them their property rights. Orangevale Way, which is on here somewhere, they allowed to go directly, come through this subdivision which is here, and come directly into their property from the subdivision. So that's this map here where that shows in Orangevale. I can't read upside down. Can you see it, Ken?
So instead of coming through the dirt road, they started accessing it through the
So you could go off of Hazel onto what became Greenhalghs Lane, or Greenhalghs Road. Mm-hmm. Then it ended Orangevale, and if you took a right, then it would drive directly into my parents' driveway. So that was part of what happened. The minute that happened with Orangevale Avenue, it did away with Orangevale Avenue between Hazel and Beach.
Okay.
They gave the Rices, who lived up on the hill on Beach, they could get to theirs because they owned the right of way on Beach itself to get to theirs. But then everybody else along Orangevale, everybody else that had property on Orangevale Avenue started blocking theirs off, saying, well, you can get to your land by going up to, from, anyway, you could get either from Pecan, well, the people just started blocking it off anyway. So that's all of a sudden, all of Orangevale Avenue stopped being in existence. And I just took a drive here about a year ago, and there's no Orangevale Avenue now, or Orangevale Avenue, yeah, Orangevale between Hazel and Pecan. There is a portion of between Pecan and Filbert. I think there's one section you can get into Orangevale Avenue from one way. Then from Chestnut to Walnut, I think you can only get it halfway in, or you have to go completely up to the next street and come in the other way. And then from Walnut to Main is still Orangevale Avenue, and Orangevale Avenue is still from Main to American River Canyon Drive.
Yeah, that's the part I know.
But
Wow.
originally, it came all the way from Sacramento all the way to Folsom.
From the,
What was, according to my mother, at one time, it was the Wells Fargo stagecoach line from Sacramento to Folsom.
I've never heard of that.
But it only lasted, I think she said, 6 months. And Wells Fargo went up as the stagecoach line.
Anyway, in this getting together on this,
Have a seat, relax. Have a seat, relax.
You want you to sit back down?
Yeah. These are great.
yes.
and you're welcome as long as my sisters have no objections. I don't even have any of the stuff that we have available to us.
Well,
Again, going back to this, one of the things that the greenhouses were throwing against my father is our mailbox, even though we were off, we could only get to it by Orangevale Avenue Dirt Road up to where their property line, our mailbox was still up at Hazel Avenue. So they tried to use that. That's been, you never had an address on Orangevale Avenue. Your address was, believe it or not, 372 Route 1, Fair Oaks. So we were Fair Oaks at that time, and I do have history of that, of the mail, that my parents were receiving mail at Route 1, Box 372.
wow.
So I'm still waiting though for somebody to come along and say, how did Greenback ever become this main through Fair Oaks? Nobody can give me that answer.
It's a two-lane road.
No, it's a two-lane road, but I mean, all of a sudden the main road wasn't Orangevale Avenue like the map showed years before then, but now it was Greenbatch Lane. Well, I have an idea, but it was political, so. Because Ansel Hoffman owned property on Greenback Lane.
You want to sit down and tell us about that?
I get emotional when it comes to
I started him on this, I'm sorry.
No, this is good stuff.
Interesting to hear how the streets were blocked off or created.
Yeah.
Right. Because the streets are, the roadway, well, not all of them. I noticed one of them is now called, the one between Hazel Avenue and Pecan is now called Calvert, I think. But it's not, if you look at, see where Orangevale Avenue used to be, where the end of, or the start of that subdivision, their backyard, it doesn't go parallel, they don't. So I don't know what happened, but
So Cherry Manor still exists? These houses still exist?
Cherry Manor, it's all those homes that are in back of the post office.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's two roads that go into it, and then they both dead end into Naranja. And she currently also lives in that where the Naranja ends, her driveway and my mother's, for their old house still exists
They're
there.
still there. Yeah. Wow. So did you want to tell us your theory about Greenback?
Pardon? I don't have it. Oh,
Ansel Hoffman.
well, that's why I say I can only think in my own mind. And it's
My
strictly
class
my own
decorated their
mind.
house for Christmas.
Means Ansel Hoffman owned at that time, and still it is. There is a circular drive off of Greenback across from the cemetery. This is Hoffman Lanes. That's a big, and that was all Ansel Hoffman's property. Well, all of a sudden, there's Greenback, that's right there, so I don't know, I'm just saying, speculation. How did they why did they do away with Orangevale Avenue and start Greenback? I don't know.
Right, because you think about it today, Greenback is a huge thoroughfare and Orangevale
Right.
Avenue is a little,
Just
Little
two
tiny
lanes.
And that was done, years ago, because I remember hitchhiking from San Juan High School, because of playing sports, we didn't have bus service. And you could go out and just put out your thumb, and somebody coming home from McClellan Field, they all knew us as kids, and they just automatically stop and pick you up and take you to Orangevale, so.
wonderful. So, what else do you want to share? Anybody else have any theories or? I love that. I mean, that's wonderful stuff. Because you do wonder why not Orangevale Avenue? It has a bridge.
Well, all of the maps, all the maps that I've seen have this same map that has Orangevale Avenue that goes and shows that this is the main avenue of Orangevale. Yet it doesn't exist anymore.
Do you remember Main Avenue being called Fifth Avenue?
No, I do not.
That's on some of the maps that way. Fifth.
Really? See, when I was born, it was that Orangevale Avenue was pretty well all blocked off. Well, I remember going up to the mailbox on Hazel to get our mail. So we still had access to our property, and the housing project hadn't been built yet, because I used to go over and pick steel.
Yeah, we all did.
Cherries from the orchard across the street, and it was also a pear orchard. So, but by that time, Greenback Lane was already paved that I can remember, and it was lined with palm trees. And then you get down past Kenneth, and the oak trees formed a canopy over the road, almost all the way to the cemetery. And of course, the cemetery wasn't there then. And I'd like to remember what year the drive-in theater was built, because I started working there like a year after it was built, and I can't remember what year that was. But I worked for Gabriel, who owned the theater, and I worked for him almost all the way through till I went in the military. Fuad Gabriel was his name.
First name?
Well, he went by Fred, but his real name, I just put Fred Gabriel.
Okay.
Fuad, I think he spelled it F-U-A-D or something like that.
Okay. Drive in. All right. Well, what else, Field family?
It's a big family.
Yes.
I think if my grandma were here, she'd tell you exactly how many grandkids there were, how many great-grandkids there were, and on and on and on, because she didn't forget a date for anyone for as long as I can remember. She lived to be 101
And a half.
and a half. She was really big about that half. Yes, she was. She was. And she loved her birthday parties, and between her house and my Aunt Donna's house, once Aunt Donna moved there were baby showers, birthday parties, weddings, family reunions, and we pretty much took up the whole space.
Yep.
And how many of these people live here today?
Well,
In Orangevale or just in the area?
In Orangevale area.
let's see, 2 of your kids, none of mine. I don't think anyone. Oh, Vicki and Doug live in Orangevale.
No, well, their address is
They're
Folsom.
Folsom, as I am right
They're at
now.
the end of
Yeah,
Golden, right? I live
1, 2,
in the Woodmore
3,
Oaks area
4,
for 33
5,
years.
6. I
Not
would
very
say,
many.
I'd say 6 of us are still in Orangevale.
But Grandma and Grandpa's house was a busy house. I can remember when I was young, we went for all Christmases. All us cousins used to draw names, They used to draw names. It was a big deal. We all crammed in Grandma's house. I don't know. I wish I could remember what year we finally had to quit meeting at Grandma's because there was no room.
Grandma's house is still there.
Grandma's house is still there, but I
And
can
we built one right
remember
next door to.
having cousin sleepovers in a tent in the backyard.
And my dad would go to the movies because there was, all the kids were
Too
there.
much noise. And I can remember one year we were in a tent in the backyard and he had watered all day.
Oh.
And by about midnight, we were all soaking wet. And I think all of us crammed into the back little bedroom and we were two per bed and laughing and carrying on. It was a great time.
Yeah.
I don't know why we were all there, but we were all there.
Grandma was a good babysitter.
She was. She was.
And she loved it.
Yep. That's what I remember.
Those are
I mean,
memories I wish we
remember
could.
all my cousins and one of my aunt Joanne's daughters was actually my best friend in high school. Her boyfriend and my boyfriend were best friends, so that meant we were always together. But we had great times.
Yeah.
And you did your grocery shopping at the Capri?
Except
Public Market and then Capri.
the main shopping, because there wasn't a big grocery store. We went to North Sacramento. Do you remember that? Grocery shopping?
Not grocery shopping, no.
Yeah, we
I remember
did.
going to school clothes shopping downtown to Weinstock's and
No, there was a store in North Sacramento, we wouldn't consider it big now, but it was bigger than that was the biggest anywhere around.
That must have been before Capri. That's probably when the Public Market was there. Because the Public Market was pretty small.
Well, that's true. It would have been when it was still the public market.
our oldest sister, who is not here, being she was the older sister, she graduated sometime before we did. She was, a lot of our income came from her. She worked full-time for Rumsey's in Folsom, and Rumsey's inside had a tier that was occupied by Ellis Insurance, and she worked both of them, and that was income to my parents that we all lived on for 2 or 3 years while my dad was building our house.
And her name is?
Norma.
Norma.
Her house is still standing.
Norma's house in Roseville.
In Roseville.
Right.
But I'm saying Grandma and Grandpa's house is still there.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And Norma's the oldest?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Have I forgotten anything? Have they forgotten anything?
Did you have any hobbies?
They didn't have time for, I'm sorry. The interviewer isn't supposed to, sorry.
Kick
That's
the
okay.
can.
We're trying to side rail it anyway.
We worked in the cutting shed.
Well, we have
Yeah, we
that.
mentioned that.
Oh, yeah.
I think because we were all working, we didn't really, other than sports. I don't remember anything around here to do other than work and,
Well, I certainly didn't work all the time, but I had fun.
You play Monopoly? Card game?
I can remember getting my paycheck from the Wu Brothers, and on $5, I could fill my gas tank up with gas. I could take a date to the movie over in Roseville, and still have money left over to take her out for a hamburger and a milkshake afterwards on $5.
Wow. Was that at Foster's?
Yes, before it became Dairy Queen, yeah. And there was also another one, and I can't think of the name of it. There was a gas station right here on the corner of Greenback and Main Avenue, and then right next to it was another little drive-in, and I can't think of the name of it.
You talking about that donut shop?
There's a name, it came up
Oh,
just recently.
Spudnut.
Spudman, yes.
Spudnut.
No, the Spud
Ellis?
Nut was down by Lehman's gas station.
Ellis? someone knew it. They used to work at it, and they're on.
Yeah, there was a little drive-in, there was a gas station where the tire store is now, and then right next to that was another drive-in. So we'd either go to Foster's or that drive-in.
What's
That
that?
drive-in was a big hangout.
Yes.
Was that the
Yes.
Masters?
No, it was a lady that owned it, and I can't think of her name, and I can't think of the name of the drive-in.
Have to find
Do
out.
you remember Aerojet testing its big motors?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I worked for Aerojet for 38 years.
So
Yeah, I
you
used
really
to shake
remember.
our house on some of those tests. And I was here also living in Orangevale when they had the train explosion over in Roseville. And it literally rattled my windows and knocked some sheetrock off my roof in the garage from the train explosion when those bombs went off in the rail yard over there.
So when was that?
The train explosion,
I want to say,
Let's see.
is it 40 years ago?
How long?
It was just, there was something on Facebook, the anniversary of.
the only thing I can
wanna say
remember,
40
I was
years.
in Little League. I lived at this time in
Citrus Heights.
Citrus Heights, and we were having a Cipino dinner at the clubhouse on the fairgrounds in Roseville. I'm sorry, it wasn't Little League, it was Castrobly Rams Club. We had a Cipino dinner scheduled, and we got to the point where we were growing fast enough that we had to get the whole clubhouse at Roseville Fairgrounds to have it in, and that was on that day. So that would have been when you were still at Castrobly High School.
Would have been the early 70s.
Yeah, like
Early
I said,
70s.
about 40 years ago.
Take us, Laura. was-
Anyway, we didn't get it. They wouldn't let the people even into Roseville to get back to go to the Cipino dinner, even though they paid because of the explosion. And so we lost a lot
Laura
of
was
money.
going to beauty school.
Oh, on
Yeah,
Auburn?
yeah, because when she called for me to pick her up, there were 2 or 3 others that was going to school there, and they couldn't get a hold of their parents. So, when did Laura graduate?
It was in the early 70s because I had just moved into my house.
Okay,
I bought my house in 1971, so probably 72, 73.
well, she probably was a senior, but I should know when my kids got out of high school.
Somewhere in the early 70s anyway.
Yeah. And at Halloween, we would go out and be gone till midnight and maybe only get to about 6 houses when I was in grammar school.
Because you stayed to visit or because it took so long to
It
get
took
there?
so long to get from house to house.
There wasn't that many people lived in Orangeville
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
It was spread out. There was,
Well, and we also did dirty things too. We up outhouses. I mean, that was our main thing. Any place there was an outhouse that was pushed over that night.
Shame on you.
It wasn't just me, it was everybody.
It wasn't us.
Do you remember Folsom moving their city boundaries
Yes, I do.
and taking over?
yeah, when they annexed, yeah.
Our grandparents lived in Folsom.
Yeah, they used to all be on that side of the river. Yep, I remember that.
Matter of fact, this property directly in back of me used to be a green belt under Sacramento County. And when Folsom annexed it and moved that over there, they could not find a place that they could agree on to have low-income housing. So they came over to Orangevale side of Folsom, which was now Folsom, and chose to make this part of their low housing. So there was a lot of controversy over that.
You know why Folsom moved their boundary?
Well, because Kip, who owned a store in Folsom, was much more smarter than the people running Orangeville at that time.
Yeah, there was an auto dealer, a Ford auto dealer,
It was right up here at the
and he
Madison.
moved across the river where.
Are you talking about
Jack in
Oxy
the-
Ford?
Yes.
Yes.
Where Jack in the Box currently is.
Right.
Yeah, that's where they moved their dealership to.
Yeah,
And
my
her
dad bought
grandfather
every
on-
car we ever owned from Hoxie Ford. Every 2 or 3 years, he'd buy a new Ford from Hoxie.
Really? I don't remember him.
Yep. You'd leave to
He
go
had
out,
the
you'd
little
have a
Plymouth
cup of
for-
coffee on Saturday morning and come back with a new car.
Who was that, Daddy?
Yeah, Daddy. My mom used to get so mad. Floyd, no, we can't afford it.
But her step grandmother on my wife's side of the family was heavily involved in the Ford ownership.
Flossie.
Flossie, with when it moved from Folsom over to here. But I didn't know that was a reason that they. I knew that Kip. I think that was his last name, Kip.
Kip and Hickens?
Huh?
Kip and Hickens?
No,
Mayor?
no.
Mayor?
He was mayor for a long time in Folsom.
It's Kip.
Yeah, Kip. He was very smart. The way he got that under the sphere of influence to be moved over on this side of the river. And I still call anything this side of the river Orangevale.
What was ours should stay ours, right?
Those are the good old days.
Yeah. Yeah.